Hi, everybody. I wish I could be with you today. I know you're there talking about listen, include, respect, and I would give anything to be up there, but just wasn't in the cards for me this time. I want to share a few thoughts with you, though, and I'm not working from a script, so I'm going to give you the best that I've got. It's not off the top of my head, but it's from my heart, and uh, I hope I hope that what I'm going to say has some meaning to you. First, I wanted to thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm Sue Swenson. I'm president of Inclusion International. I'm an American. I live in Maryland, born and raised in Minnesota. I came out here to be an appointee in the Clinton administration and then later in the George W. Bush administration for a short time and in the Obama administration for both terms. And I just finished a short term for the Biden administration as a senior advisor, which is just an 8-month appointment. So I'm a kind of a usual suspect in political appointments. I don't want to talk to you about politics, though. I want to talk to you about human rights and what I think you're doing and how I think it's going to help people with intellectual disabilities. So, Listen, Include, Respect is based on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. That convention is based on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was drafted and ratified in 1948 as a response to the atrocities of the Second World War. I want to point out a couple of things. I know we're always in a political season now, but the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was really profoundly supported by two American presidents, Ike Eisenhower and John Kennedy. Political rivals, they would today be thought of as opposites in the political spectrum, but both deeply committed to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and to human rights in general. John Kennedy pointed out that, yes, it was maybe the greatest generation, and we always think that's because they fought. My dad was a soldier in World War II. My mom was a nurse in World War II. And it is wonderful that they put their lives on the line and that they went out to try to protect human rights of people they didn't know in countries they'd never been to. But the important thing is not that they fought. The important thing is what they fought for. President Kennedy made that very clear in his inaugural address. You should look at it if you get a chance. It's really important for us to think about that too. You know, when Charlie was born, my son with disabilities was born in 1982. Charlie died in 2013 in January. So he's been dead now more than 9 years. Miss him like crazy. He was with us for 30 years, so we knew the ins and outs pretty well. He had wonderful support starting at age 11 from direct support professionals who helped him first to get some freedom from me, because I noticed that the laws in Minnesota said a child could be separate from their parents for up to 4 hours a day starting at age 11. And I thought, well, where is he going to get to be separate from me? I engineer his whole life, right? So he started to get some help then, so guys who could help him just be in the community and hang out. And it progressed through his life. When we moved out to Maryland, he started to get really serious support, and for the last several years of his life, he had support in his own house with two roommates who also had disabilities, and really brilliant support. His DSP, Nate, worked with him for 13 years, which is kind of unheard of. He certainly didn't do it for the money, but they had a partnership that was really profound. Nate always said to me, I don't work for Charlie. We're co-workers. We together make communities more inclusive. And that's true. Wherever they went in the community, they made it more inclusive. Charlie had mysterious disabilities. He never spoke. He never took a step. He needed help with toileting and feeding and all of the other things that you guys probably know about. He was a stitch, though. He could always tell when something funny was going to happen. Maybe you work with guys like that, people who start laughing before the funny thing even happened. That was my Charlie. That's what got me into this whole field and started me working about this. When I was in college, I knew what human rights were. I worked with some professors who were working on human rights. We went downtown in Chicago to Human Rights Day every day in the early winter. I thought of human rights as something, maybe you do too, something that happens at the UN level. And Inclusion International works at the UN level. You're part of our network. You're working at the UN level to try to make sure that rights are respected and recognized. And maybe you think that human rights are something, countries complain about another country so then they can sue them or embarrass them because of human rights abuses. That's true. That's real. That happens. But human rights also happen in families. And they happen between direct support professionals and people with intellectual disabilities. And you help advance people's human rights, whether you know it or not. We spent several years and consulted with 350 organizations around the world, Keystone Human Services among those, and talked to self-advocates and developed plans and drafted them and worked with self-advocates and kept honing it until we had what we now have, which are the guidelines that we call Listen, Include, Respect. These are guidelines to help organizations that have meetings or panels, or maybe it's just a one-on-one meeting, but a meeting where the person with the disability really needs to participate. They need to have the information. They need to know what's being discussed. They need to be able to say, here's what that means to me. Here's a story from my own experience. Charlie was well out of high school, and I had started to say I wanted him to be included in all of the interviews for any staff that we would be taking. And we needed to hire a new DSP for some hours. And so the interview happened in my living room right over here. And we had 3 or 4 guys come in that day, and the manager of the team was a woman who had been Charlie's DSP at one time. And Charlie was there, and I was there, and we interviewed the guys, and the manager was there. And at the end of the interviews, when they had all left, I said, well, any of these guys would be okay, except not that one guy, because he grew up in an institution. His dad was an administrator there, and I thought his habits would be, those sort of institutional caregiving habits of follow the rules, do what needs to be done at the right time, blah, 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 check the check marks. I didn't want that for Charlie. I said, anybody except that guy. And the manager said, too bad, Sue, that's who we're hiring. That's who Charlie chose. I said, what are you talking about? What do you mean he chose him? She said, didn't you notice Charlie scooted his chair over next to that guy and patted him on the arm? And that's Charlie's signal that means, I want this guy. And she had noticed that because she was a direct support professional for Charlie. I hadn't noticed it. I'm his mommy. I didn't notice it. I clearly wasn't giving him enough option, enough chance to really make the decision. And that was a learning boy, that was a learning opportunity for me. Later, when I spoke to the man that we did hire, he said, yeah, I grew up there, and yeah, that's what my dad did his whole life, but that's not what I do. I went into this work because I want to do something different. I want to be a different kind of supporter, and he turned out to be a fantastic support for Charlie. Somebody who really advocated with me for Charlie. He would say, no, Sue, Charlie doesn't want to do that. He wants to do this other thing, or he wants to do it this way, or he wants to wear this clothes, or he doesn't like to eat that, so we're not going to make him do that. He was an internal advocate for Charlie's human rights in Charlie's life, and it made him a better supporter. He's still in the field, by the way. He works professionally in a large organization now. Till the end of Charlie's life, he used to come and take Charlie out for breakfast with his kids and stuff. They were friends. It was a real relationship. I think that having that recognition that the job wasn't just a caregiving job made it more deeply satisfying. You know, you don't do this job for money. We're not paying you enough. You're not going to get rich doing it, but you're going to get great experience. And if we really start to understand that direct support professional work is about human rights, it's about listening and including and respecting people with disabilities, I think it's going to make your job better for you. I think there are many of you who are already doing it, and I'm guessing that that's where a lot of your job satisfaction comes from. And having an organization like Keystone Human Services, where the leadership recognizes this, you probably have some good chances to be doing it. So, what we're going to do with you between Inclusion International and Keystone Human Services is really take these guidelines. You're the first out of the box of all organizations like yours around the world to take the Listen, Include, Respect guidelines and try to figure out, are they really practical? Do they work? Does it make this work easier? Does it make it better? Do the people that I work with, self-advocates who are served by Keystone Human Services, do they think that this is a good approach? Does it make sense? And then, hopefully, there will be some leadership that we can begin to train the trainers around the world in how to use this set of guidelines. And hopefully, you will be some of those leaders. Hopefully, some of you will step forward and say, I'm really interested in doing this. Or a self-advocate will step forward and say, yes, I'm interested in doing this. We think these are transformative. We think the people who developed them really knew what they were talking about. But we want the process to be organic. We want it to move forward. We don't want to just set up some rules and say, okay, you have to follow these rules. God knows with Medicaid, you have enough rules already. But we want to set up guidelines and a framework that help you continually improve how you're doing with this and help us continually improve. Maybe you will come up with some insights that we're going to end up taking back to the UN and saying, yeah, here's what this is going to have to be like. Now, the guidelines were introduced to UN organizations this week at the Conference of States Parties to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in New York. Very positively received. So, now the rubber hits the road. Now, real organizations doing the real work need to step up. And we hope Keystone will be that turning point for us around the world, the organization that says, yeah, this works. And we can take it to organizations in Europe and Australia and Scandinavia and everywhere else around the world and show them, here's how you make it work, because we know how we figured that out. I really appreciate what you're doing. I hope that you have a chance to meet the wonderful staff from Inclusion International who are there with you. And I'm really looking forward to what comes out of this. Thank you very much.